Hello, BookTube. Well, if you've been watching this channel in 2023, I think you won't be surprised to hear what I'm going to say, which is that mail hauls on this channel have become a trial, a genuine trial, a spawning place for wasted time. They started out years and years and years ago. They're a staple of this channel. They started out years ago with my older dogs, with me opening all of my mail. Pre-pandemic, I got a lot more mail than I do now, and picking out one or two books that I would talk to you about. And then I decided on the experiment of opening the mail on camera. I remember feeling a little nervous about that, but not only did it worked really well. It has a serendipitous element where we are both discovering what's in the package at the same time. And that's a lot of fun, and I stuck with that for years, 6 years of mail hauls on this channel. There might have been tremors that wouldn't work in 2022, but in 2023, those tremors became grand mal seizures. And suddenly, in 2023, I was making videos, opening a package, talking to you. I lose track of this being a video in no time at all. It becomes a conversation right away. I would be talking to you about what I'd opened in the package, and then I would see idiocy or sheer lunacy. Just a book that was conceived and written in an alternate reality that is being published and pushed in an alternate reality that's being sent to me in an alternate reality under the confident expectation that I will review it in that alternate reality. I live in the one and only reality. So, and more often in 2023, I have encountered a book like that and simply started ranting to the camera. And 40 minutes later, I realized, well, you should just stop this video because you're not going to upload this. You're not going to add to the tension of their day instead of decreasing it. So that happened over and over again. And originally I thought, well, that means mail hauls are done. You can't do mail hauls anymore because you don't know what you're going to get in the mail. You don't know if it's going to be. Then I thought, well, no, this is a staple. This is a pillar of your channel, so you shouldn't stop. Instead, exercise a lot of self-control. First of all, number one, the bright red line. Do not anymore read author bio notes. The little author biographies on pub sheets. Just don't read that. That is where a racist, sexist, a bigot is going to show themselves. That's where they're going to proudly declare it. It's those personal character defects that got them their job at whatever academic institute they currently work at. So of course they're going to parade them. So the bright red line is don't read those. But then in addition to that, I thought, no, just exercise more self-control. If you hit something that is insane or bigoted, simply stop what you're doing, say food for thought, and move on. I tried vetting the mail a few times, like I did in the olden days, like I did at the very beginning of this channel. It didn't feel right. It felt artificial. It felt like I was prepping a video. And I don't ever feel that way when I turn on the camera. I don't ever feel like I'm prepping a video. I'm having a conversation with friends. I'm not prepping a video. But even that self-control. Okay, don't read the bio notes of the authors. Definitely don't do that. But also, when you encounter some weird spitting piece of Twitter ideology, just stop. Don't try to power on from there. Don't try to find something else to say that's neutral or even positive after that. Just stop. When you encounter that, just stop. View the whole thing as a lost cause if you encounter that, and drop it and move on. Those are good strictures. They would work, but they haven't. The last week, I've done at least 3 videos that I could not keep. I couldn't dream of uploading them, so I just didn't do them. I was 40 minutes ranting to the camera, and then I realized what I was doing and wiped the spittle off my face and deleted the video. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm at the very beginning of those kinds of books, not the end of those kinds of books. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to keep trying. So today we have half and half. I have 2 books that I have already opened and that are vetted that I think you might want to know about, and then 2 packages that, of course, I haven't opened that have my heart in my throat. Because will this be a wasted video? But before we get to the books, we'll do the periodicals, like for instance the Bedford Times Press in Bedford, Iowa, with a scenic picture there on the cover of Bedford, Iowa, being swathed in a snowstorm. For those of you who are living on the East Coast, that is what it was called that used to be called a snowstorm. It's when precipitation as particulate matter would fall as white, fluffy snow, sometimes for a whole day. And the Bedford Times Press is a very local newspaper. It has 911 calls and hog reports and whatnot. And you'd think, after all the time I spent in Iowa and how much I loved it, that I'd subscribe to a lot of those. But I don't. The reason that I take the Bedford Times Press is because they run my column every week. Me, for 1,000 words, writing about some bookish subject. And I'd be happy if my column ran in your local newspaper. Feel free to put out feelers to whoever runs it. I assure you, my rates are reasonable. And how does this one start? I've made no secret of my love for ebooks. For many decades, while I was buying and reading and loving paper and ink books of all kinds, a part of my imagination was picturing an entirely different, entirely better reality for the whole experience. Sometimes the science fiction I was reading helped, but I didn't really need James Blish or Poul Anderson to help me dream a better mousetrap. Imagine a book that took up no shelf space. Imagine a book that could be infinitely annotated. Imagine a book whose contents could be searched instantly and easily. Imagine an entire library that would be carried around as easily as a deck of playing cards. And you might think from that I'm going on to give a homily about the superiorities of e-reading, but I'm not. The column takes a turn, twist, as my columns sometimes do. And then the other newspaper is the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, a broadsheet newspaper from Martha's Vineyard, which is an island off the coast of Massachusetts. That I got a little bit of shock when I saw the front cover, because the front cover is not local. The front cover is the Massachusetts State House. With that building, I know every room in that building. I know every tiny little subsection of the basement and sub-basement. I know every nook and cranny of its library, for instance, which is members only. But a lot of the members that have been walking around in the State House making corrupt deals for 40 years are old cronies of mine. That's one of the reasons that I love the Vineyard Gazette. Another reason is that I am a writer for the Vineyard Gazette. I am their book reviewer. And the Vineyard now is it's been a seasonal sort of destination for a long time, a century. And the ultra wealthy go there every summer or have condos there that they inhabit only during the summer. And as a result, the population of the island increases by 10 times during the summer. So, Memorial Day, Labor Day, that sort of thing, the traditional span of summer. And my business with the Vineyard Gazette also increases in that time. During the winter, it can be fairly fallow for books. But during the summer, the pace will be a little bit greater. So I don't know how many of you are planning on going to the Vineyard for the summer, or a week in the summer. A week in the summer on the Vineyard will cost you $100,000. But if you've saved up and you want to have a vacation in a truly beautiful place, maybe you'll go. You'll certainly encounter the Vineyard Gazette when you're there. And then we have the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement, with this cover. That is a very young Martin Amis, and this TLS reminded me of something that I was probably going to forget, which is that this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Rachel Papers by a very young, a 20-something Martin Amis. 50 years since the Rachel Papers came out. That is utterly unbelievable to me. And this issue has a long appreciation, a reread of the Rachel Papers by Claire Loudon. That was really good. It was not at all what I was expecting. I was expecting that it was going to be tinny, puritanical, moralizing. I expected that it was sotto voce going to call for the cancellation of both the Rachel Papers and the physical lived reality of the author. Not only do I not want anyone to read this novel, but I would really like it, not said this way, but definitely stochastically implied this way, where the author is stochastically implying, not only should we not read this novel, but I'd really like it if one of you out there who's reading this piece would murder Martin Amis. But instead, the article was completely different than that. It read the book with sympathy, a good deal more sympathy than I've ever felt towards it. It actually made me feel like maybe I want to read the Rachel Papers again. I haven't read it in 50 years. I loathed it at the time. And Claire Loudon in this piece is zeroing in on a lot of the reasons why I did loathe it and saying those were just maladroit readings. That is really interesting. That is really, really interesting. She's probably, it wasn't her intent. It's obvious when you're reading the piece that it is just heartfelt and not proselytizing at all. But nevertheless, I bet she's going to get a lot of people to reread the Rachel papers. Certainly, I will be one of them. The next time I encounter a copy at the Brattle Bookshop, I will snap it up and I will read it with that piece in mind. In fact, I'm going to clip that piece out of this issue and keep it against the day when I find another copy of the Rachel papers. Unbelievable to me that I would ever think that way. Then we have the New Yorker. The New Yorker came today. I believe the cover, what is the title of the cover? Rise and Shine. I believe the cover is supposed to reflect on the weird angles of light here in this intermediate period when it's not the stingy light of winter, but it's not yet the everyday, all-day light of summer. I kind of like it in a stark kind of way. And this issue is going to feature in Poetry Thursday, which I'm not going to ignore today. I'm going to read a poem. And it may be a poem from the New Yorker. But Inku Kang is their television critic, the New Yorker's television critic. I have no idea who Inku Kang is, and I'm not going to check because I don't want to start making this video unuploadable so early before we even get to the books. I feel 90%, 85%, 90% certain that Inko Kang is going to say that Inko Kang is neither a man nor a woman. I feel 90% certain of that, and I don't want to know. the writer bio profiles are right at the beginning of this issue. I could flip to it in a fraction of a second, but I don't want to know. Instead, I will concentrate on the fact that this reviewer reviews the new adaptation of Great Expectations on Hulu. I do not subscribe to Hulu, and I do not have a screener for this, so I don't know what this adaptation is like. But I was a little bit. There's an ominous note here. I wonder if I can find it that mentions how this is being done. Traditionalists will balk at the show's many departures from the novel and likely at its blue-lit, try-hard edginess, but this energetic remix doesn't betray the spirit of the original. Dickens's heavy social conscience, character-driven scenes, and preposterous plotting are all deftly distilled. That seems like the kiss of death. That is a writer, clearly trying to be generous to something that the writer liked, but that is the kiss of death. If you have to say that, much less say it in the second paragraph of your review, that means that the Hulu version of Great Expectations tears up the novel and just throws the pieces in all directions like that. Typically, that's what it means. I'll have to see it. I have a friend who will send me a screener of it. I haven't thought to ask. And I should, because the last few Dickens adaptations that I've seen on big screen or small screen have been quite good. But anyway, then the one last periodical that we have is House Beautiful, which leads us to Donoghue's decor tips, because this is all about backyard retreats. Do you have a backyard retreat in your home? The issue starts with a vast amount of ads, gigantic, extremely expensive ads for extremely ugly things. I mean, that is a kitchen. Look at this thing, this table. It probably cost $750,000, and that's without delivery. And it's unbelievably ugly. It is an unbelievably ugly piece. Look at these things. Those are stools. They're supposed to be stools. They probably cost $300 a piece. Look at these things. Those are supposed to be lamps. They probably cost $300 a piece. So the front section of any issue of any of these magazines is always inaccessible. They're meant for the people who are purveying the kind of monstrosities that we're going to see in the second part of the magazine. But the second part, the feature section of the magazine, is about backyard retreats. I've known some epic backyard retreats. There's one from a couple. Unfortunately, the couple is insufferable. So as much as I love the backyard retreat, I don't often see it because they're just awful. They're just awful, pretentious, snooty people. I don't like the fact that they use the mumbly talk to kids voice when they talk to me. They talk to me, I'm older than both of them put together, and their doctorates don't compare to mine. Their reading doesn't compare to mine. Nothing that they are allegedly basing that on, other than money, applies. It's always my understanding with people like that they, despite the fact that they are thinking about social awareness or the school they went to or the degree they got or the books on their shelves, what they mean when they exercise that tone is that they make more money than you do. and they would deny it until they were pink in the face. They're pretty pink in the face to start with. Not only do I hate that kind of just reflexive, completely genetic level condescension, but also I can't stand the way they treat their dog. I mean, they like so many young couples, they got a dog as a trial run for having a baby. Dog's going to live for 16 years. You're not going to wait 16 years to have a baby, which means you're getting a dog for the specific purpose of relegating it to the background and being annoyed by everything it does. And that's what happened. They got a dog as a trial, of course, named it Loki, and had the dog for a year, I think, or a year and a half of doting and, repressive fascistic training and getting it booties for the winter and whatnot. And then we got pregnant and, of course, had a BIPOC doula. And now Loki is all but forgotten and is slowly going insane. He is slowly going insane from simple neglect. He gets food, he gets water, he gets shelter, he gets a walk when they remember. Otherwise, he gets let out into a postage stamp yard, the yard with this backyard retreat in it. Every blade of grass of which he knows. It is essentially the same thing as letting a solitary confinement prisoner out in a concrete block yard for 11 minutes every week. It's the exact same thing. It's torture. It's not pleasing. It's torture. I've heard this insufferable couple, when they're about to let Loki out into the backyard, say, "Oh, time for go on an adventure?" It's not an adventure at all. Unless a plane crashed in that yard, it wouldn't be an adventure for Loki. It's torture for him because he can hear and smell the world that he's never experiencing anymore. Never. Because, little all cops are bastards. Little ACAB came along, and little ACAB demands all of their attention. They don't know exactly what kind of attention to give little ACAB because they don't know whether little ACAB is a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, male or female. They have no idea. They won't know until little ACAB opines on the subject as a freshman in high school. So their care for little ACAB is around the clock because they don't know whether they're caring for a female child or a male child. I love their backyard retreat. They do have a backyard, to haul myself back to the point in question. They do have a backyard retreat, and I love it. But I have to confess, I seldom take invitations, and I seldom accept them anymore. I come up with some sort of excuse. Because the number one feeling that I have when I'm there is, the last time I was there, last summer, the only thing I wanted to do was take them both aside and say, "Look, I originally thought to say to you, I would like to adopt Loki. But I'm not going to say that. I'm taking you aside here to the kitchen nook to tell you that I'm going to adopt Loki. I'm here now in your backyard retreat for this little event, and I'm leaving with your dog. I don't need any of your supplies, but I also don't want your permission. I'm not going to permit this to happen any longer, and you aren't going to miss this dog. You know as well as I do that you're not." I didn't say that, of course, but I wanted to, and it was the only thing I thought about the whole time I was there. So better probably just not to see it. I know that sounds cowardly, but my number one mantra when I see something like that is I can't save them all. I've done a lot of work to save a lot of dogs, but I can't save them all. Loki is at least in a better position than 60% of the dogs in the world that don't have any shelter, no medical care, no food, no water on a regular basis, no nothing like that. He's at least in a better position than that. It's just his needs are not being met at all. He is a prisoner. And I fear that if I were to take an invitation to this backyard retreat this coming summer, I would do that. I would simply say, "I'm leaving with your dog. Kindly don't object. Kindly for once in your life, don't lie that you would miss this dog. He served his purpose. He was a trial run for you to talk about with your friends at the dog park. He doesn't go to the dog park anymore. He doesn't get any exercise anymore. He never has any variation in his routines anymore. And you're content to consign him to that for 10 years. He's going to live like that for 10 years. And you know as well as I do that the end of that 10 years will be brutal. The minute he loses control of his bowels, you will have him euthanized when he has another year or two to live. Could have another year or two to live. I will not make that decision. My whole world will revolve around him, and I bet I could acclimate him to Frida and her to him. But anyway, that was a long digression, wasn't it? We're doomed. We're just doomed. So let's look at these backyard retreats. The first one is in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and you can see right away the problem with it. It's a math problem. This is not a backyard retreat. It's a parallelogram. It's a math problem. How far apart is this tree from that tree? How far apart is this tree from that tree? How far apart is that tree from that tree? How far apart is this chair from that chair and that chair from this chair? How many of these steps are there? How many beds are there here and how many are there here? Is it the same number here as here? If it's not the same number, will you fire your entire legal alien gardening staff? Yes, you will. You absolutely will. Sure, it might be pretty, but it is a math problem. It was created in Fairfield County, Connecticut by two psychopaths. So better just not to think about it. Let's just move on to the next example, because that's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of a garden like that, is the symmetry, the math, which is not how gardens want to be. It's not how the human eye looks at gardens. Instead, it's there because you're a psychopath fascist. Then we have, what do we have here next? Dreamy colonial style house. Which is fairly dreamy. It's a big sprawling place. It's a nightmare to me, of course, personally, because it's totally open to the public. I don't want to have a home that's totally open to the public. And I don't care if you have some sort of sticker on one of those doors that talks about what a high-level security system you have. That is still totally open to the public. And it's fairly busy. The living room is fairly busy, too busy. And it shows us a quality that runs right through this issue of House Beautiful, which is people turning their back on nature, which is kind of weird for an issue, the focus of which is backyard retreats. The couches here are back to the windows. And that's true in every home that we see. The couches are back to the windows, so that you are not looking at the window. Let's not even talk about this heresy. Take those little bars out. Take the crockery out. You have one mouth and one meal. You only need one plate. And fill these shelves with books. Oh no, but the books, if they're already in this mausoleum, they are carefully secluded from use. See? See what I mean? The chair has its back to the window. You might say, well, you want the natural lighting, but no. No, you don't. You want to be able to look out the window. Same thing, the bed. You can see the ceiling, where I'm sure you have a pretentious piece of artwork, but you can't see outside. Ooh, boo, boo, boo. Ooh, boo, boo, boo. These pieces are never actually about the dogs, even though dogs are sometimes in them. Notice the lounge? Try, if you can, not to look at the hideous artwork. Instead, look at that. The couch is back to the window. Half the people sitting in this room cannot look out the window unless they crane their necks around. I don't know where that hatred comes from. I guess it's because these people are just generally horrible anyway. Then we have, let's see, where is this one? This is in northern Florida. Notice the house is built up on 5-foot pylons, because they're, I don't know if you can't make it out probably here, but they're on the floodplain. That is water right there in Florida. Can you imagine? That is not going to be high enough. But they decided to do that and to give everything a nice, airy, open look. Kind of nice. That porch is actually pretty enviable, except for the absolute. Well, there is a phrase. There is a phrase. I won't use it because it's not polite for this channel. But let's just say a lot of bugs. That porch will be home to a lot of bugs and snakes. But when I got to one of the rustic bedrooms, I saw a detail that I could not help but love. I saw an old beagle, in this case a beagle mix. An old beagle sitting on their bed. I mean, the room is absolutely hideous. This is where people hide who want to kill you. That's what these are for. They're not for storing clothes. They're for people who want to kill you to hide in them until you are asleep. So, of course, you would get rid of those, right? And the natural light source is over here, as you can tell. So with this thing here, you can't see it if you're in bed. So you'd want to get rid of these things. Put the bed underneath the natural light source with the head right here. Put a nice bookcase from floor to ceiling here. Maybe another one from floor to ceiling here. Then another one over here, floor to ceiling. It's salvageable. But the thing I love, of course, is that the beagle is not young. The beagle has been around. Then we have, this thing is in the California, and the article actually calls it open season. Because again, this is open to the public. This is a home that the public can wander into at will. And that is just insane to me. I don't care what the rest of the design elements are. That's just insane. And look at this. It's insane, and we all know what it's based on. And the thing that it's based on is absolutely not going to get mentioned in the article. The thing that it's based on is ruthless armed security. It isn't that the people in this house are far away from their next neighbor. I guarantee you that's just the back, not the front. It's not that they're far away from their next neighbor. It's that they have shoot-to-kill orders for anyone who comes anywhere near their property. This is actually an armed encampment. It's just designed to look like just the opposite, which is it's always a little bit alarming to me. I mean, that is not a bedroom that you want to have. You don't want to be able to sleep in that bedroom, and the only way you will is that you know that Alejandro has a scope rifle on the roof. That's the only way you're going to be able to sleep in a room like that, I would think. Was that it for this issue? Oh, yeah. Then we got profiles of the various creators. They are exactly what you would think. Exactly. Oh, right. Here we go. In a tranquil corner of the Napa Valley, two designers create a hillside compound to host family and unforgettable parties. Guess, for this couple, which of those two things are more important? Family or unforgettable parties? Take a wild guess. This one is also open to the public, but it's also a heavily armed encampment, so it doesn't really matter. That might be the design they're going for, but they're not fooling anybody. They've got the usual horrifying, spiritless rooms. Keeping look again that all of these things are facing away from any kind of natural view. They're facing each other. And I believe, am I right? Yeah, there are books way up on the shelf, literally out of reach. They are a decor item only. They are not. There's no reading that goes on here. And the rest of the place is every bit as depressing. I mean, that's the dining room. That is the bathroom. Are you going there for a nice schwitz or to slit your wrists? Which are you trying to do? Look at this thing. This is a dining room. That is not a painting of moss. That is moss. The two designers who created this, the artistic centerpiece of this room, is a collection of moss. No idea if it has bugs in it or not, but that's what it is. And look at the table. No idea what these things are, but I guarantee you Alejandro with his scope rifle would shoot you if you tried to move one of them. And the chairs are rattan. And so, if I were walking into this room, let's say I was staring at the books that I can't touch, and then I walked into this room and I'm walking past here, and I merely put my hand on the top of this chair in order to walk past it, it would collapse into 1,000 little fibers. Again, I want to stress that the yardstick for your house, the yardstick for every element of your decor, should be me and my old frenemy, Deb. We are two old, clumsy, sweaty, fat creatures who have been around since the Wars of the Roses. And despite that description, we're as cool gets. You want us as house guests, and you aren't going to want us to leave. You're going to say that you do, but you aren't going to want us to leave. And everything that you have in your house, every design, every sightline, every piece of furniture, every bookcase, should be designed with me and Deb in mind. If we're going to destroy it, if we go to use it, if you have a little writing desk that's on spindly little legs, so you can't plant your elbows on it and write a long Dear John letter to Steve. If that's true, if it's going to fall apart the minute a normal person uses it, get rid of it. All of your furniture, every room of your house should survive the Steve-Deb experiment. If it doesn't, it's a failure. This is a failure, for God's sake. Just in case you're wondering, they also have the rattan furniture outside as well. With the neon. Oh my God. And also a bocce ball court. Do they play bocce ball? No. No, they don't. No. Is there a reason why it's not a koi pond? Well, yeah, because they hate all living things. Instead, it's a bocce ball. Frank, he went there for a week to that Italian place and he studied the rules. And then the worst possible element is something that the magazine goes out of its way to point out. This is the actual backyard retreat. That the article says that from the outside door of the walkway, you would never know that this space existed. That's the only attempt that is made in this issue to actually profile what a backyard retreat really is. It must not be visible. It must not be open to the public. It's a retreat. It's not supposed to be, you're supposed to discover it. And when you go there, you're supposed to be able to shut the door on the whole outside world. This is one of those things. And you might think, well, no matter what the sins of the rest of the place is, this is pretty. This, surely you can't find any fault with this. I don't know if you can read that. Let me read it for you. There's a little line pointing at one of these picturesque trees. The line leads to a description. 200-year-old olive trees were craned in from California, from Corning, California. They were ripped up out of the ground where they'd lived for 200 years and craned in to be accent designs for a backyard retreat, in case the bocce ball court wasn't enough. So House Beautiful, once again, denying the promise of its title. But then again, we have books. So let's do some books. We have the two that I have already vetted that might be of interest to you. This one, the first one comes out in July. This is called Escape to Florence, and it's by Kat Devereaux. But I'm assuming it's not my Kat Devereaux, because she's been dead for 500 years. So this must be another author, and we're never going to learn anything about her, because I'm absolutely not going to read her autobiography. But this book is rather nice, rather pretty looking. And this is one of those novels that has a split narrative, that's split not only between people, but between eras. A lot of you love that kind of thing. I think it can be done really well. Only 14, Stella Infuriati, what a name, is the youngest member of her town's resistance network during World War II. Risking torture and death, she relays messages, supplies, and weapons to partisan groups in the Tuscan hills. Her parents have no idea, consumed instead by love and fear for their beloved son, Achille, a courier and unofficial mechanic for a communist partisan brigade. So she's doing all that and her parents don't know. Then, after 1945, Stella seemingly vanishes from the records. Her name and story are overshadowed by the tragic death of her brother, until a young writer arrives in Tuscany in the spring of 2019, uncovering long-buried secrets. And then we shift to the young writer. Fleeing an emotionally abusive marriage and a lonely life on an isolated estate, Tori McNair has come to Florence, the beautiful city her grandmother taught her to love, to build a new life. As she digs into her family history with the help of Marco, a handsome lawyer, Tori starts to uncover secrets of the past, truths that stretch back decades, to a young woman who risked everything to save her world. So, with a split screen premise like this, your overwhelming certainty is going to be that Tori's grandmother is Stella Infuriati. And the author knows that. Kat Devereaux knows that your suspicion is automatically going to be that. So is she going to play with that expectation and then reveal that it's true? Or is she going to play with that expectation and then, as the saying goes, subvert it? No idea, but I'm all for it. I'll be definitely reading this in the height of summer. And then the other book, this also comes out in July. This is from Oxford University Press, and the cover is very bland because this is an advance that they do. This is Into Bright Sunshine. Young Hubert Humphrey and the Fight for Civil Rights by Samuel Friedman. This is what the cover is going to look like right there. You can't really make it out, but I'm hoping that I'll get the finished copy. Never expected this in a million years. During one sweltering week in July of 1948, the Democratic Party gathered in Philadelphia for its national convention. The most pressing and controversial issue facing the delegates was not whom to nominate for president. The incumbent, Harry Truman, was the presumptive nominee. But whether the Democrats would finally embrace the cause of civil rights and embed it in their official platform. Even under Franklin Roosevelt, the party had dodged the issue in order to keep a bloc of Southern segregationists, the so-called Dixiecrats, in the New Deal coalition. On the convention's first day, Hubert Humphrey, just 37 and the relatively obscure mayor of a mid-sized city of Minneapolis, ascended the podium. Defying Truman's own desire to occupy the middle ground, Humphrey urged the delegates to, quote, get out of the shadow of states' rights and walk forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights. Humphrey's speech put everything on the line, rhetorically and politically, to move the party and the country forward. To the surprise of many, including Humphrey himself, the delegates voted to adopt a meaningful civil rights plank. With no choice but to run on it, Truman seized the opportunity it offered, desegregating the armed forces and in November upsetting the frontrunner Thomas Dewey, a victory due in part to unprecedented surge of black voters. some of you who are very young might be wondering at this point, what on earth? Truman didn't have to do that. What is even a plank? What is a platform? Because the Republican Party, one of the two major political parties in this country, has officially said that it does not have any stated beliefs. It does not have a platform. Donald Trump is its platform. They refuse to adopt one. They don't have a platform, much less a platform that the candidate, the nominee, would be obliged to adopt. They don't have anything like that. Their platform is Donald Trump. Whatever he says goes. The outcome of that week in July 1948, which marks its 75th anniversary as this book is published, so this is coming out at a very specific period, shapes American politics to this day. And it was in turn shaped by Humphrey. His journey to that pivotal speech runs from a remote, all-white hamlet in South Dakota to the mayorship of Minneapolis as he tackles its notorious racism and anti-Semitism to his role as a national champion of multiracial democracy. His allies in that struggle include a black newspaper publisher, a Jewish attorney, and a professor who had fled Nazi Germany. And his adversaries are the white supremacists, Christian nationalists, and America Firsters of mid-century America, one of whom tries to assassinate him. His enemies are the white supremacists, the Christian nationalists, and the America Firsters. So this is going to be wild to read. I'm not going to read either one of these things right away because they're both coming out in July. Probably I will wait until I get a finished copy of Escape to Florence in order to read it. Probably I will. Unless I dip into it and find it utterly irresistible, I will probably not do that. And Oxford, I'm going to have to pay close attention because a little quirk of Oxford's publicity department is that they often don't send finished copies. They often just send the advanced copy. They make some of the greatest books in the world, so I'm not really holding it against them, but it means I can't wait for the finished copy or I'm going to be out of luck. So I'll set both of them on some sort of timetable. But then we have two packages here. I notice we're going long. So let's do these packages and get them out of the way, and then we'll be done. And hopefully these will not mean that I have to cancel and delete a 45-minute video. I really do not want to cancel and delete this video. So let's see what we have here. Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, this is not staying here long, but I might as well show it to you. This is coming out in June. And this is Where Are Your Boys Tonight by Chris Payne. This is a history of emo's mainstream explosion. Let's see here. We've seen the lasting power of 2000s nostalgia and the resurgence of punk and emo to the mainstream as a new generation rediscovers the genre. Have we indeed? In this book, if Meet Me in the Bathroom traced New York City's early 2000 rock scene, then this book gives the inside story of the turn of the millennium emo subculture that became bigger than anyone thought possible. There was Pete Wentz, the Fall Out Boy leader who launched a litany of scene-stealing bands and preposterous side hustles, and Gerald Way, the wizard behind My Chemical Romance and The Black Parade. Panic at the Disco and Paramore emerged soon after. Are those bands? People? Venereal diseases? I have no idea. Obviously, this is not from me. I have a reviewer who wants this book, so it'll be going out in the mail. Well, when? Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. The weather forecasts are calling for torrential rain. I don't believe that's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, if I'm right, if it's dry as a bone, then I'll put this in the mail tomorrow. But what is this next one here? Emo music. Well, probably a lot of you recognize the names that I was just rattling off. Probably a lot of you do. Let's see. Let's see this. Oh, great. Fantastic. All right. We don't have a sheet for this, but we've already seen it. And I'm really up for it. I think this is probably an April release. If I remember correctly, this is an April release. We've already seen it. Let's just go through it one more time. This is A Brutal Reckoning by Peter Cousins. And its enormous subtitle is Andrew Jackson, the Creek Indians, and the Epic War for the American South. And Peter Cousins is a name well known to me. Talk about credit in the bank of Steve. He's never written anything I don't like. Okay, so the back of the book is no description. The back is just blurbs for his book, The Earth is Weeping. But we can read from the dust jacket like you would in a bookstore. This is going to be $35, and I think it comes out later this month. The Creek War was one of the most tragic episodes in American history, leading to the greatest loss of Native American life on what is now U.S. soil. It's now U.S. soil by might makes right, by eminent domain, not by treaty. The treaties are still in effect. There's never been any counter treaties. But anyway, what began as a vicious internal conflict among Greek Indians metastasized like a cancer. The ensuing Creek War of 1813 to 1814 shattered Native American control of the Deep South and led to the infamous Trail of Tears, in which the government forcibly removed the southeastern Indians from their homelands. The war also gave Andrew Jackson his first combat leadership role, and his newfound popularity after defeating the Creeks would set him on the path to the White House. In this book, the author vividly captures the young Jackson, describing a brilliant but harsh military commander with unbridled ambition, a taste for cruelty, and a fraught sense of honor and duty. Jackson would not have won the war without the help of Native American allies, yet he denied their role and insisted on their displacement, together with all of the Indians of the American South on the Trail of Tears. The author also reveals the vibrant cultures and ways of life of the Creeks and their Indian neighbors before conflict shattered them. I am up for it. I am really hoping that that this becomes a kind of classic. I'm hoping that it becomes a standard work on the Creek War. The Creek War's had a lot of research done on it. There were a lot of books. I don't want to spoil this peaceful mail haul, so I'm almost afraid to check to see if this book has the 21st century virus of not including a bibliography. That is totally inexcusable. There is no excuse for that whatsoever. But he does. Oh, thank God. All right, great. All right. Well, his bibliography is probably full of a lot of the very regional historians who've done great, groundbreaking work on every detail, every day, every hour of the Creek War. But it hasn't had a popular book. It hasn't had, Custer died for your sins or something like that. And I want it to have that. So here's hoping that this is that. Here's hoping. So there you go. That is the mail. That was totally painless. Except that I was reading, Sanskrit when I was talking about emo music. I'm assuming that a lot of the names in there are familiar to a lot of you. What about this young woman? Is she familiar to a lot of you? Do you know who that is? Probably you do. We have A Brutal Reckoning. We have something about emo music. We have Hubert Humphrey. What I wouldn't give if this book in any way set the pebble to the avalanche and got me an 800-page Hubert Humphrey biography in 3 years, that would be wonderful. And finally, Escape to Florence, which, notice, we're told that Tori McNair is coming to Florence to escape an abusive marriage. But what if Stella Infuriati also escaped to Florence? Probably the title has double meaning, as split narrative books like this tend to have. So there you go. Not a bad mail haul, a little bit on the long side, but we got in periodicals as well. I'm going to wrap this up at the 45-minute mark, but at least I don't have to delete it. That is great. I almost lost it at the beginning, but we managed to pull it out. I will be better next time. Maybe this is just a matter of practice, like everything else. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.